Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Power and Protection and Resiliency webinar by Carbonite and Webroot. We'll give everyone just a minute to join and get started in just 30 seconds. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Power and Protection and Resiliency webinar today by Carbonite and Webroot. I'm Jamie Zajac, and I'll be walking you through how our solutions today address some of the biggest cybersecurity needs and challenges in the industry. The topic of cybersecurity is constantly evolving, and it's really something that everybody needs to be paying attention to today. There's constantly breaches in the news about bad actors and hackers that are getting access to tons of critical data of people. We hear about this with some of the largest companies that we think are really modern and secure, being to these data breaches and data loss scenarios. But the truth is that cybersecurity isn't only a challenge for large enterprises, it's a really big challenge for small and medium-sized businesses as well. In a lot of cases, SMBs are actually more vulnerable than some of those large enterprises and large companies that we see, some of the big names and logos. And there's really a lot of reasons for this. Primarily, SMBs are more vulnerable because they tend to have limited IT staff and knowledge around and expertise around how to prevent and protect against cybersecurity attacks. A lot of small businesses are relying on older or insufficient technology. It may be a particular system that was implemented many years ago that's working just fine and there's no need to change it. It may be due to lack of ability to invest and really upgrade things, or it may be due to priorities. Small businesses are really busy and have a lot going on. A few key people wearing a lot of hats to keep that business running and growing and evolving. And frankly, thinking about cybersecurity might not be the top priority on the radar. And the list and reasons really go on. But the thing is that we've realized over the past few years is that hackers are aware that large enterprises and businesses, though they have a lot of data and there's a lot of value that a hacker can obtain from a large enterprise, they've actually been able to find ways to attack small businesses and be even more successful. So if you think of every given credit card record that a hacker can acquire, or an email address list of customers that they can acquire, it's a lot easier for them to go after, at this point, 100 small businesses and get a list of 100 emails from each business than it is to necessarily attack one large enterprise to get the same bounty. And so because of this, hackers have turned a lot of their attention from large businesses to small businesses. Also, when we look at the way that the cybersecurity hackers have really evolved, it's not just about exfiltrating data anymore. It's really about any way that a hacker can make money. So a lot of what's happened in the industry over the past 5 and 10 years has been hackers and bad actors evolving their techniques from just causing disruption or trying to get access to critical assets, but to actually running a business, right? We have to actually think about these hackers as businessmen, right? They're actually trying to make money off what they're doing. And so any way that they can find to get into a small business and to make money off of it, whether it's attacking via ransomware and trying to hold that business hostage to pay them to get their data back, or exfiltrating specific data, or even just taking down a competitor, or a group of competitive small businesses to promote their own interest. They're interested in doing this so that they can make money. And where SMBs are vulnerable and subject to these attacks, the hackers will continue to press upon this. So, this is really one of the reasons why you need to have a proper protection in place. It's not just protecting against bad actors, but it's actually protecting against a lot of different angles and different reasons of things that could affect you as a small business. So, for example, not only do you have to think about outside attackers and bad actors, but you also have to think about malicious insiders. Nobody likes to think of, one of their own employees turning on them, but we are all human and people are subject to influences. And if an employee gets particularly disgruntled about a given scenario, there's opportunities for them to kind of cash in with some of these hackers and these bad actors and bad businesses out there to go after some of your data and information. We also have to think about compliance. A lot of businesses are kind of dealing with the evolving compliance regimes that exist. So, a lot of people think of compliance as being things that only affect, again, very large businesses, but an increasing number of small businesses are also subject to new compliance regimes. So if you're dealing with credit card data, if you take any sort of commerce transactions, you need to think and understand what's your PCI requirements. Do you have requirements in place as you're processing those credit cards and those transactions to have the proper security in place to protect them, to make sure that those credit cards aren't getting out of place? Even if you use a third party, you may need to think and understand how that impacts you as a small business. If you're dealing with any sort of healthcare information, you may be subject to HIPAA compliance and regulations, and you need to understand how those regulations impact your business. You also need to understand what the fines are and what the implications of not being compliant are, or of facing a breach when you are under one of these compliance regimes. Some of the newer laws that have been enacted in the United States as well as in other countries, for example, GDPR, and in California, some data privacy requirements, put a lot of businesses into a place where the requirement to report breaches and the requirement to have proper security solutions in place to protect against breaches has really raised the bar on what you need to provide and how a small business needs to handle these requirements. So it's not just thinking about, a once in a lifetime, really bad scenario. There's constantly businesses that are under attack, and there's constantly threats that need to be mitigated for small businesses. And I think it's also, again, important to understand that small businesses face the same exact attacks and in many ways at a higher volume than some of the largest businesses out there, right? So a hacker or a bad actor that's trying to get some information or trying to plant ransomware is just as likely to go after a business with 10 devices as they are with 1,000, because they're simply looking for any place that they can get in and they can make some money. We've actually seen also the attacks on SMBs rising in the past few years. And, again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that small businesses don't have the same cybersecurity experts and the same cybersecurity readiness in place to combat these attacks, right? As a small business, many people don't have an entire IT staff of cybersecurity experts on hand to make sure that they're protected. So it's really important that you look at not only how you're protecting your business, but how what software and what vendors you're using and who's your kind of trusted resource for making sure that you get it right. Right? The implications of not getting it right are severe and really can impact the business. So one of the biggest recommendations that we always give to our small businesses is looking at how they're protecting against the cybersecurity threats, right? They're constantly evolving, they're constantly changing. So what is it really that you can do to make sure that you're protected? So I like to use a really simple analogy to communicate this point. I think about the challenge of trying to cross a road, right? It's a really basic scenario, but stick with me here for a moment. Crossing a road is a pretty dangerous scenario, right? A person's going to walk out in front of cars that might be traveling 40, 50, or 60 miles per hour. So how do we make this inherently dangerous scenario something that's safer? Well, there's been a lot of different tactics that we've put in place to make that scenario safer. So for example, we've painted crosswalks on the road, right? We've encouraged people to cross in a consistent spot. We've put up stoplights, right? So that cars know to stop when there's someone crossing the road, or they know that they should slow down in a crosswalk area. Then we've even installed for people that are trying to cross the road, indicators as to when they should stop and when they should walk, based on the lights. When someone gets halfway across the road, we even have a countdown going, making sure people are aware of how many seconds they have left to cross the road before the cars can start moving. Right? In some cases, we've even added audible alerts or little dots as you're going to cross the road so that you're aware that you're crossing into a dangerous scenario. Right? There's a multi-layered approach that goes into something as basic as crossing the road, multiple layers that are trying to protect you and protect all of us from making a mistake and crossing in the wrong spot or walking in front of a car. And no matter how many of these different layers that we put in place to try to protect someone, we have to recognize and understand that, some people still cross the road even when they're not supposed to, right? Walking out in front of a vehicle and catastrophe can strike. I use the same analogy to look at how you need to protect your business, right? You need to have a multi-layered approach in place to protect you. You can't just protect against one threat coming into your business or one particular vector. You need to look across your business at all of the different vectors that can come into place and how you're protecting against each and every one of these, right? If we have multiple layers in place just to protect us from crossing the street, certainly as we're looking at protecting our business from an evolving cybersecurity threat, we need to make sure we have multiple layers in place as well. So this is where we look at how you look across your business at all of the different applications and all of the different attack vectors that somebody could use to get into your business and making sure that you have them all covered. So we look at this as kind of two key parts. So first is you want to make sure you have an antivirus in place to protect and stop as many known threats as possible getting in. But then you also want to recognize that data is the #1 asset of most businesses, right? Without the data and the content that you're creating as a business, it's really going to be difficult to recover and to get back up after something. So being able to combine some protection, but then also having a backup plan so that if something gets through, you still have a way to recover and kind of get out of jail from that scenario is important. If we look at things like ransomware, right? It's really common for attackers now to use things like ransomware to try to get ahead so that they're going to kind of get past any antivirus that you have in place, encrypt all of the data on your laptop, and literally hold you hostage to pay that ransom to get your data back. Well, if you have a backup solution in place, then you're able to not have to pay that ransom, not be held hostage, and you can simply get your data back from your backup system and continue on. It's a lot less impactful to your business. It's a lot faster to recover from, and it can save you a whole lot of money. So let's dive into a few of the ways that we've actually designed our solutions to help protect small businesses from these threats. So like I mentioned, hackers are constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the antivirus and of the cybersecurity providers that exist. And so our solution is designed to try to protect our customers as much as possible, providing the highest level of protections that we can. So the way that our system works is we have over 67 million sensors that are out there in the infrastructure, running on everything from endpoints to routers to other areas where we can install sensors that are constantly learning and monitoring and understanding what the current cybersecurity landscape looks like. Because we have such a vast network of sensors out there that are constantly monitoring and seeing what's going on, we have a big data cloud-based infrastructure that we're using where we're constantly pouring in all of this data that's being collected. Anytime applications are running, URLs are being clicked, changes are being made on the internet, we're able to process, to scan and process and understand that information. From the time that a threat is first detected on any one of our sensors, we're able to get all of that information processed and replicated and available to all of the other 67 million endpoints in under 5 minutes. So this is really important to think about, right? When a new threat comes into place, a hacker creates some sort of malware that they're trying to get out there. Across the entire Webroot infrastructure, we're able to get this out to millions and millions of endpoints in literally only a couple of minutes. What that means is it's nearly impossible for a hacker to keep up with modifying their software to try to stay ahead and get it into many places. In order to kind of continually evolve this, we're looking at ways within our infrastructure and within our technology to get smarter and smarter about this. So as we're trying to stay ahead of these bad guys, we've started to incorporate additional techniques around artificial intelligence and machine learning to better help us understand and classify threats that are coming in. So for example, we have services that are constantly scanning the internet, creating IP and DNS-based reputations of good and bad sites, and able to replicate that information across our customer base as quickly as possible, so that as soon as something bad happens, everyone else is protected and able to take advantage of that deep learning that we have. One of the big changes that's evolved in the industry has been hackers creating not just a traditional piece of malware, but really branching out into other technologies that they can utilize. So things like trying to phish against users or social engineering to try to really get in the heads of people and get them to do bad things. And so a lot of also what our products are focused on is looking at not just specific pieces of malware, but really understanding the behaviors of an application that's good and the behavior of an application that's bad, and making sure that any application that's running, if it's exhibiting some of these bad behaviors, that we're able to classify that and then protect our entire customer base from it as quickly as possible. So this means even if you're dealing with polymorphic malware or new techniques that are being utilized, that we're able to very quickly identify that and get our entire customer base protected from it. So how exactly do we do this? Well, part of the way we do this is that we don't rely on a single piece of technology or a single vector of protection, right? Back to that crosswalk analogy, we have a multi-vectored and multi-layered approach into how we protect small businesses. So, the most common and probably well-known part of our technology is our endpoint protection, right? This is the agent that you're running on each machine, that every time you click on something or every time something's running in the background, it's looking at it, it's classifying those behaviors, it's utilizing that really lightweight and cloud-based infrastructure to classify and help you keep you protected. But there's more than just the endpoint. We also have to look at the network, the users, what people are accessing on the internet as well. And so our different solutions really go in and start being powerful and looking at some of these additional areas. So one of the more recent evolutions that we've made to protecting our users is not just looking at what's running on their endpoint, but looking at everything that's on the network. So how are those systems communicating with each other? How are those systems communicating out to the internet? What's coming into the network, right? The best way to protect against something running on the endpoint, a piece of malware running on the endpoint, is to not let the malware get on the endpoint to begin with, right? If something's not on your network, then it can't cause you any harm. And so DNS is something that's often taken for granted, but it's actually a really powerful thing that if you can protect and take control of, that you can actually stop things from getting in. For one common thing that we hear a lot of people say from a network level is that they're running a firewall. And small businesses and large businesses should absolutely be running firewalls to try to keep out as many bad things as possible. However, a single firewall isn't a sufficient solution, right? We need a multi-vectored and multi-layered approach to protect the business from all these different angles of threats. For example, a firewall doesn't actually inspect DNS requests. So they're allowed to pass right through the firewall and browsers and users are able to resolve and get bad things into the network. And because of a lot of these kind of complex scenarios with around DNS and how it works, means that actually a lot of businesses aren't fully protected against it. And so you want to make sure you have a solution in place that helps protect you. So how exactly does somebody leverage DNS to get into your network? Well, what might happen is that you may have a piece of software that's running and it's been attacked by a hacker within your network, and they're using DNS to kind of phone home to a command and control server, right? So a lot of malware that might get put on a machine is actually really lightweight and fairly basic. And what it's designed to do is phone home once it gets installed and pull down some instructions from a malicious site as to what exactly it's supposed to do. Is it supposed to scan to try to find credit card numbers, or is it supposed to install some ransomware and encrypt the machine? Is it supposed to exfiltrate information, and where should it send that information to? And so if you're able to block some of these services and these processes from ever getting to their command and control server, or from ever being able to talk to the sites, the malicious sites or bad sites where they're trying to exfiltrate data to, then you're able to protect yourself. So in this case, even if one layer of protection has failed or has allowed something to get through your network, you have another layer of protection that says, okay, even if that malware is running on the infrastructure, at least it can't get anywhere. It can't evolve. It can't do anything that it's not supposed to do. And so this is an important part of the overall protection to look at, if one level fails, how does the next level kick in, and how do I make sure that that I'm still protected? One of the most important things to understand about using a multiple vectored approach is that what we find with our DNS protection is customers who are protecting on the DNS side are actually reducing the amount of malware that is attacking their network by 88%. That's a huge percentage. right? If you can stop 88% of malware from ever even getting to your network by blocking it at the DNS level, then that really takes a lot of pressure off the other vectors and the other layers that you're doing, right? Now you're only trying to protect against that additional 12%. Well, if every layer that you put on can stop, a large percentage, then it really helps reduce your overall risk. And it helps you make sure that the least amount of things are ever getting into the network are getting into your endpoint and are impacting, your business and impacting your data. So once you've got an endpoint solution in place to make sure that any malware is being detected and that it's cloud-based, so it's able to quickly learn and identify bad behaviors and protect and block you from those. And if you've also got something at the network layer, right, that's trying to prevent malware from getting in, as well as preventing any malware that might be on your network from communicating to command and control servers or to exfiltration points where it needs to upload the data. You say, okay, well, what else can I protect against? I've got my machines and I've got my network covered. Well, the next big step is your users. Users are really the weakest link in almost any cybersecurity program that you have in place, right? From a technology perspective, it's one thing to protect the machine and to look at certain behaviors and leverage that AI and machine learning that we have on the back end. However, users are really difficult to protect against. They're always going to be the weakest link in any security chain that you have. So it's really important that you educate your users about what they can do and how they can be smarter and how they can prevent things from getting in. So, a lot of people on this webinar, might be IT admins and working in a technical profession. And so when they say, well, what am I really training people to do? What am I teaching people? A lot of times it's the really basic concepts that many of us take for granted that we need to make sure that everybody in our organization knows, right? Most businesses and small businesses in particular have a really wide swath of people with different backgrounds, different expertise, different age groups, different levels of technology experience and knowledge. And so, asking users to, check for HTTPS traffic and make sure that it has a valid certificate on the site, is a fairly technical concept. It's not something that everyone can readily understand. But training people into the best practices about what they should click on and what they shouldn't click on, and who they should allow into the business and how they should use their computer from a secure standpoint is really important. So, when we look at an overall cybersecurity, program, you do want to make sure that you have all of the right technology in place, but then you do want to make sure that you're also training the users. And so if you look at this is really where, at that user training level is where our security awareness training comes in. And our security awareness training covers a couple of different scenarios. So the first is training. The more, courses that you can give your users, the more, quick hit learning opportunities to learn something and understand and practice that skill, the better they're going to get. Training is something, as we all know, that needs to kind of be a lifelong journey for us. You can't train people once and hope that they remember everything. Training needs to be an ongoing concept where they're constantly being trained and updated. In addition, since we know that hackers and bad actors are constantly evolving the techniques that they're trying to attack small businesses with, it's important that the training courses that you're launching to your users are also evolving. So understanding and teaching people about things like phishing, right? That just because someone sends you an email doesn't mean you should reply with your credit card number, or that you should reply with banking information, right? It's important to kind of teach users how to understand what information should be shared over what platforms, what information should not be shared. And part of a good training program, as we all remember from our days in school, is testing your users. And so if people know that at any given time they're being tested with for example, with a phishing simulator, where you're actually sending what looks like real phishing emails and then able to measure who is clicking on these links that are test links, right? They're fake phishing links. Then you're able to really, do a couple of things. One, you're keeping the awareness for people so that they're kind of always approaching clicking on links in emails or sending important information over email with a little bit of skepticism, right? It's good for people you really want people to be asking themselves and asking you, is this a real email? Is this legitimate? should I be taking this action or should I not be taking this action? And so the next kind of part of a security awareness training program is testing your users, is sending targeted phishing emails to them, measuring the response that you get as far as who clicks on them and who doesn't, and then following that up with additional training. So if users are clicking on these malicious links and if they are exhibiting some of these bad behaviors, you're able to complement that with training and with education to help them get better and understand. And then really being able to kind of measure this over time. So as businesses are training users, as they're testing them, as they're making sure that those that fail the test are receiving additional knowledge and training, you want to be able to report on this and see that over time, you're actually increasing the security posture of your business by doing this. So maybe the first few rounds of training and of phishing simulations, you have a higher click-through rate than you'd like. Well, you want to kind of continually follow this up, continue to emphasize those concepts, and be able to monitor that over time. This is also a key part, not just of good security and cybersecurity awareness training, but of a lot of compliance protocols. A lot of compliance regimes require that you do some sort of training and education and being able to report on that over time. So a lot of things, a lot of people are understanding and a lot of regulators are understanding that you can't simply prevent from a technology perspective, you have to also prevent from a user perspective and make sure that you're educating users on things as much as possible. So, from a Webroot perspective, one of the ways that we try to bring this together for small businesses is by centralizing all of these different layers of security and different approaches together into one place. So, as a business, protecting yourself against cybersecurity threats is incredibly important, but having the time to do that is really hard to find. And so what we focused on here at Webroot is by kind of curating the different solutions and the different techniques that you need to give you that robust level of protection, but making it super easy to deploy and manage it from one place. So for example, we mentioned having both endpoint protection as well as protecting at the network level in the DNS. We've made that really into one application, so you can deploy one agent and configure one set of policies and groups and one report across different applications. This helps give you a better level of security by making it really easy to put on more and more levels, and it also reduces your overall management overhead. So as opposed to learning and managing and deploying and updating multiple applications to keep yourself protected, you're really just doing one thing and then recognizing the benefits in a magnified way. Same with our security awareness training. So for example, you might detect that certain endpoints are getting infected at a higher rate than other endpoints. You may want to identify the users on that and really start researching and understanding if those users need more training and need more awareness about what they're getting hit with. Maybe those users are high value users within your organization and they're being targeted with spear phishing attacks that are really targeted at trying to get information out of them. And so maybe they need to have a higher level of awareness and training and skepticism as they go about their interactions with their computer on a day-to-day basis. So the first part of a good cybersecurity practice is by trying to prevent as much as possible from getting into your network and onto your endpoints, educating your users to try to prevent that from happening. But the other thing to realize is that no matter how much you try to prevent everything from happening and all the bad malware from getting in, at the end of the day, something is still going to get through your network. Even if something doesn't bypass your antivirus, there are other ways that data protection is important in your business. So we can look at not just malware, but also things like theft and malicious insiders that can impact your data. Data has evolved in the past 10 years to becoming, the #1 asset that most businesses have. Who their customer list is, what they've sold to them, what opportunities they're processing, the intelligence and the intellectual property that a business develops over time is really key and becomes most businesses' differentiator in how they do business and how they go to market. And so recognizing that data is more and more important than it ever was, you need to look at how you're protecting that. And how do you make sure that somebody doesn't, wipe the server, either from a malware perspective or a malicious insider, or even just sometimes by accident, that something bad can happen to that. So to kind of complete the protection and resiliency story, the Carbonite side of the house comes together with the Webroot cybersecurity protection to really complete that story and offer the comprehensive nature that small businesses need. So again, on the Carbonite side here, we have a few different solutions that are geared at protecting different types of data. So we recognize that not all data lives in the same place or is of the same type, and you need to have a different application and a different strategy in place for those different types of data. So the first type of data that we talk about is user-specific data, data that's generated by the users and typically lives either on their endpoint, so on a laptop or desktop computer, Mac or Windows computer, or it may live within a cloud-based application. For example, Office 365, which is really common for email and for OneDrive and SharePoint files as well. And so our Carbonite Endpoint 360 offering protects all of the endpoint end user data, regardless of where it's created or where it's stored. So as people are creating financial documents and spreadsheets and sales forecasts and sales proposals and other intellectual property that they're creating, regardless of where they're storing that, locally or in the cloud, all that data is able to be protected with just a few clicks of the button and stored in a secure and encrypted fashion within the Carbonite cloud. This means that you can easily recover it across users and across devices based on however your business needs evolve. This is also the best layer of protection that you can have against ransomware. Ransomware has really been running rapid over the past few years, and constantly hackers finding ways to stay ahead of antivirus providers and of technology to find a way to get onto the laptop. Whether it's through a targeted phishing attack or some other means, they're able to get onto those devices, slowly encrypt all of the data that lives on it, and then hold you hostage for large sums of money. But if you have a backup plan in place, then regardless of how that ransomware got onto the machine, you're able to quickly wipe that machine and then restore the content to a previous point in time and continue carrying on with access to all of your data. So not all data is end user specific data. A lot of important application data and applications themselves are running on servers. These servers might be running locally in your own office or in a local data center or managed by a managed service provider, or they may be running nowadays in a cloud, such as Azure or AWS. However, regardless of where the server is running, the applications that are being used every day by your internal and external business users need to be protected. And so when you're dealing with data that's running on a server, it's important that you have a few aspects in place. One, you want to make sure that you have flexible recovery options. So you need to understand, how long can I go without that server and without that application running before it's really going to impact my business? If my server is running an e-commerce application and it's running perhaps a website to track that e-commerce information or to collect that, and it goes down for a few hours worth of time, those could be lost transactions to you. If it goes down on Black Friday, that could be a lot of lost transactions for you. And so the Carbonite server platform is designed with different tiers of protection to give you the ability to recover it as fast or as slow as you need, to recover from insider attacks, to recover from data loss, to recover from physical issues on the hardware itself, or to recover from some sort of cybersecurity threat that's impacted it, again, such as ransomware. The Carbonite server platform has an extensive breadth of different solutions and applications that it can protect, over 200 different applications and operating systems. So regardless of what you have running within your business infrastructure, Carbonite server is able to handle it and make sure that you have fast recovery from local files as well as recovery from offsite options within the Carbonite cloud as well. And then the final solution that we'll talk about here is Carbonite Migrate. So a lot of times as people are evolving their business and as their businesses change, whether they're growing or changing markets, the technology and the infrastructure behind that business needs to change and evolve as well. So whether it's that you're moving to cloud-based systems to gain some of the benefits of pay-as-you-go server models, or whether you're moving to different data centers to deal with locations and costs that you might be taking advantage of, or simply doing some upgrades, maybe getting a bigger infrastructure in place, or maybe downsizing your infrastructure as you've increased efficiency in certain areas. And so it's really common to need to do some sort of data migration, where you need to move your servers either physically or logically to a new location. And so Carbonite Migrate makes it really easy for businesses to make those changes to their technology and to evolve their infrastructure to meet their ongoing needs. Carbonite Migrate is an agent that you install on your servers, and in real time, it replicates all of the data from the current primary server to an offsite server or to a replica server. That replica server can be anywhere else. So Carbonite Migrate allows you to move from anywhere to anywhere. You can go from a physical infrastructure to a virtual infrastructure, an on-premise infrastructure to a cloud infrastructure, from one cloud to another, and then from the cloud back to an on-premise infrastructure. So regardless of how your infrastructure is evolving, Carbonite Migrate makes it really simple to get to the new location while minimizing the downtime required to get there. So as opposed to taking applications and servers offline for many hours or even many days, or giving up your weekend to try to migrate a server without impacting your business users, Carbonite Migrate makes that a few button clicks, and you're able to get that infrastructure moved, reduce the downtime, and evolve your business from a technology perspective as you're required. So kind of going back to the beginning, what is it that exactly you're trying to protect against? Well, bad actors are out there trying to make money in any way that they can disrupt your business. Any data that they can acquire, that they can exfiltrate from your business, any way that they can attack you and get money from you by stealing devices or stealing data or implementing ransomware and holding your data hostage. There's lots of different items that you need to protect against. And it's not just about, external bad actors. There's a lot of other things that you need to look at, such as, hardware failures or theft, or even the own users within your business, intentionally or unintentionally causing challenges for your infrastructure. The thing to remember is that more and more businesses every year are being attacked, and small businesses are becoming an increasing target for bad actors for many reasons. And so it's time that small businesses really understand this and look for the right tools to put in place to protect themselves and to increase their overall cybersecurity posture. So with that in mind, I encourage everyone on the call here, if you have any questions that you want to type into the chat, we'll take a few questions here in the remaining minutes that we have. And if you have any follow-up questions, or if you want to talk to someone specifically, we encourage you here to reach out to either of our teams here at Carbonite and Webroot for more information, for a more in-depth demo, or even just to ask some questions and get some feedback on some of the best practices that you have. So at this time, we'll go ahead and start addressing a few of the questions that have come in. So the first question that we have here is around compliance and whether we as Carbonite and Webroot are HIPAA compliant. So HIPAA is a compliancy required for any health information or personal health information that businesses are storing around medical records and such. And yes, Carbonite does support HIPAA compliance for all of our customers. We meet all of the tenets of that, and we do sign BAA or business associate agreements with our customers and partners as well for that. Okay, and looking here at a couple other questions. The next question here is around security, looks like security awareness training, and how often should I be training my users? So, again, if we kind of go back to when we were in school, repetition is key for anyone to learn and any training that happens. So with something like security awareness training, we recommend doing training about once a month with your users, having some sort of module for them to follow or training course, and kind of a consistent drumbeat of phishing simulations that you do with them to keep them aware and on track of what's going on. So probably about once a month or so would be a good interval to do some training. Okay, and looks like those are all the questions that we've had come in so far. So this time I'll just once again thank everyone for taking some time for joining us today, and encourage you to reach out to any of us here at these emails on the Carbonite and Webroot team, and for any other questions that you have or more information that you look forward to getting. So thank you again for your time and joining.